So I recently quit TikTok. Let's talk about why. If you watched my last video when I was basically kind of talking about how much I have struggled with the first part of 2025, excluding January. January was a great month when it comes to productivity. Um, you'll may have noted that I talked quite a bit about just sort of this burgeoning awareness of like, I just turned 50. How much time reasonably do I have left in my life? And basically just kind of taking stock of, you know, if you think of your time, our time, whatever, as currency and it's limited, um, it is our most valuable resource. What are we spending it on? Particularly when you get as old as me, what I mean, or maybe older, who knows, um, I think you just kind of maybe start to think about how you are expending your most valuable resource. And, I grew up in a time when there wasn't, oh my gosh, I grew up in a time when there's no internet, we didn't use computers. I hand wrote all my essays in school, this kind of thing. And so, yes, back in the dark ages. And so, social media came on relatively late in life. For me, I was already an adult. We didn't have smartphones until, after I already had kids, that type of thing. And so I have most of my memories are, pre-internet, pre-social media, pre-documenting sort of everything that's going on in our lives, from beginning to end, type of thing. And so I think this last, couple months, I've really been thinking a lot about quality of life, just sort of the quality of my life and what is the value that I'm getting out of anything that I'm spending my time currency on, kind of thing. And, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to really very quickly come to an answer that um, any time spent, nearly and almost all any time spent on a lot of these highly addictive and designed to be highly addictive social media platforms is basically robbing you of your most valuable resource, which is your time, your life. I think it's maybe more powerful if you like substitute the word time for life. You are spending your life. I was spending my life, on these platforms. It was, almost never giving me anything truly valuable back in return. Like I might get a few laughs. I might get a little rage depending on, what it is I'm looking at, which, all of it is just basically hijacking my mind, my emotions, all sorts of things. So another like just great book that I've read in the last, several weeks or whatever has been very valuable to me. This is The Dose Effect. It's by TJ Powers. It's Optimize Your Brain and Body by boosting your dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. I'm not going to do a deep dive of this book, but I'm going to tell you basically, how it touched me, what it's kind of changed for me, and, how I'm thinking about things. So very specifically in the first part of this book, he's talking about your dopamine. And I know it's a hot topic right now. Everyone's talking about it. We talk about how part of the reason we're so addicted to our phone is because we have like a dopamine response every time we look at it. And so like a lot of people, if they start to pay attention, if they're feeling stress, anxiety, overwhelmed or whatever, they have this tendency to kind of reach for their phone. And whether they're looking at social media or their email or something along these lines, it's releasing kind of a dose of dopamine into their body that is helping to regulate their emotions, their mood, their whatever. The problem with this is that a lot of people do that not aware that that is happening for them. Additionally, particularly I think if they're going into social media and very specifically the short form video contents, which is all TikTok is, right? And of course, Instagram Reels is the same thing. You now have shorts here on YouTube that do the same thing. And you just start scrolling. And I know you, as have I, have completely lost ourselves in that activity. Like, raise your hand. I mean, you're scrolling through and you just watch a couple videos that somehow capture your attention. And next thing you know, like half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour of your life has evaporated before your eyes as you've been scrolling. So, a couple things about this. I'm inclined to say, like, it's not your fault necessarily that you're losing your life in this way, because there's a lot of really smart people with access to amazing and in-depth psychological research about how to keep eyes trained on these platforms, right? Like they want your eyes, they want your attention. That's how they, can slip the ads in between the different videos, and get you spending money on their platforms. And they are designed with an intermittent reward system, which, if you have even like a psychology 101 background, like intermittent reward is the most addictive form of a reward cycle. And so, if you don't know, what is that? So it's basically like if you imagine a slot machine, that's how slot machines are programmed. And so, you pull the slot machine when you're first starting out, maybe 2 or 3 times. You win a little something, right? And you're like, oh, okay. That kind of gets you, excited. You're going to like pull that slot machine a few more times. Now, if you might pull it one more time and get rewarded again, probably not, but you might. But so then the next time you pull it, maybe you'll pull it 5 times and you get a reward. Now that's twice. Now maybe next time you're going to pull it 12 times before you get any kind of a payout on that. I'm like, okay. And that's taken 12 times to reward you. Then maybe you pull it 4 more times and you get a reward. The next time you pull it, you might be willing to pull that thing 27 times before you get a payout on it. And research has shown like that is the most addictive reward schedule. If you want to keep a rat, if you want to keep a person pushing a button, put them on an intermittent reward schedule. It's unpredictable. You never know when it might happen. It will eventually happen, but you have to keep pushing that lever, that button, whatever it is that you're doing. And this is essentially how social media platforms are structured. You're scrolling through that content, and not every video that you hit on is going to elicit a response or gain your attention or whatever. Maybe it's every third video, maybe it's the third video, and then maybe it's a seventh video, or in whether it's like makes you laugh or makes you cry or makes you rage or whatever. It's trying to make you feel something. And those algorithms are in the background like reading you, essentially reading your psychology and figuring out what is gaining most of your attention. What are you sharing? What are you commenting on? What are you liking? It's collecting that data. It's using that data to place you on an intermittent reward schedule to keep you doing what? The consistent scroll. They want to keep your eyes. So dopamine. Let's get back to that. So as you're doing that, that's releasing dopamine into your system. Now, the thing about that is that when you do it, it's releasing a tremendous amount of dopamine into your system. And you have a finite amount of that kind of stored up in your brain. It's not just this, it's a chemical in your brain, and it's not on infinite availability, right? And so you'll kind of tap out of that. But what it ends up doing is, like, say if the first thing you do in the morning is you pick up your phone and you start scrolling, you're dumping dopamine into your system. More, all of it, whatever you have stored up over the night, it's all going, like you're using it all up. And so then if you imagine, it's kind of like if you equate it to like a sugar high and a crash, a sugar high and a crash. And I'm particularly susceptible to those. Like I love chocolate, kind of thing. But if I get on like a sugar bender, like I will eat sugar and then I crash. And then basically for the whole rest of the day, it's difficult for me to get off of that sugar roller coaster, because then I'll like binge on sugar, crash on it, binge on sugar, crash on it kind of thing. Whereas if I never really kind of start eating that candy, first thing in the morning, I'm okay. Like it doesn't bother me. It's just this continual kind of, I'm getting what I need from the foods I'm eating, that kind of thing. It's nothing that's spiking me really high like that. Well, dopamine, I think, is pretty similar in that way. Like if you are spiking yourself on it, like first thing in the morning, then you've depleted your resources and you're going to crash. And so then what happens? Like maybe an hour goes by and you find yourself reaching for that phone again to get that spike, right? But then you're crashing. And you kind of do that all day long, picking up that phone and more so spike and crash, like I tell you what, TikTok does not care about your neurological well-being and health. Absolutely not. They just want to keep your attention, your focus, any of those sort of things. So what does this mean? For any of us that are trying to, get through a day or wrangle back our attention and focus. Um, because I'll tell you, that's what I'm hearing a lot lately. And I've experienced it myself too. Like this inability, this growing inability for us to sustain attention and focus to more cognitively difficult tasks. Like we're depleting our ability to do hard work. We are escaping it, basically. I mean, as much as we can, whenever we can, or, maybe we work on something like, so I write books. Okay. So maybe I start working on a chapter. And because I've so depleted or damaged my ability to maintain focus attention by constantly feeding myself easy short form content in this way, I might only be able to work for 10 or 12 minutes before it's like, like it feels painful to maintain that attention. And so then I need a quick fix, right? A quick dopamine fix. Well, in his book, and fairly early on in the chapters kind of thing, TJ Powers, who's, I think he's a neuroscientist. I believe he's out of the UK. He talks about how historically, biologically, we are sort of designed, we come from this sort of hunter-gatherer background, which is a lot of hard work, right? If you're going to actually have to go hunt and gather for your food, it's hard work, and you have to sustain a lot of effort over a long period of time in order to survive, right? To feed yourself, feed your people, all this kind of thing. So essentially how dopamine worked for us, outside the modern age is that, you'd go out into the wild, whatever, you're hunting, you're gathering, you have to sustain effort for a very long time before you have the reward of food kind of thing. And then you get, a dopamine hit. And that actually we release dopamine in our natural state throughout our time of working hard. You know what I mean? So like, if I wasn't addicted to my phone and I wasn't addicted to scrolling short form content that is highly, like overly rewarding to my brain kind of thing, I would be able to release dopamine throughout while I'm maintaining flow state. So flow state is what you get into when you're deeply creative or working hard on like a difficult project, kind of thing, and you just get in the groove, so to speak, whatever. I would get dopamine throughout that process kind of thing. And it would just kind of be this steady kind of like, me eating nutritious food. If I don't start with the candy, first thing in the morning, I'm spiking, crashing. If I just, get up, have a healthy breakfast, kind of thing, I'm maintaining like this sort of equilibrium throughout the day that's keeping me sustained. And it's the same thing, our dopamines, we're going to get this like steady kind of sustainable release throughout the day while we are engaging in, whether it's physical or cognitive tasks that are difficult. We find them rewarding when we get into them. Except, less and less of us now are able to accomplish that because of this addiction. It's like if it's easy to equate it to that sugar addiction, that's dopamine addiction, the crash and the burn, up and down, up and down. And so I think, I've like, you're sort of aware of this, over the years, and, kind of hear people talk about why this is a problem, how it's impacting us individually and as a society, and all these kind of things. But it was just, recently, like when I was reading, I told you in that last video, Deep Work by Cal Newport, which impacted me greatly. And then this book kind of came in on the heels of that for me into my life, in my awareness, The Dose Effect by TJ Power. And I think just the way, he explains in there and I'll tell you this book, whereas deep work is maybe a little bit more like, if you're having a hard time sustaining attention, and so to the point where you're like, I can't even read a book, kind of thing, maybe get this one in audio format, or maybe try to find the short form version of it. Because I would say this book is maybe a little more dense, not for somebody who is, they are so kind of, off the focus and attention track that they can't sustain attention to a book. TJ Powers, I would say, like, reading this, it's like I almost feel like he really took that into account. Like, he was maybe targeting an audience very specifically that needed the book to be even laid out in a very digestible format for people who are really, really struggling. Really struggling. They are so far gone. Now, I mean, I still write, I still read books all the time. Like, I don't think that my attention is so fractured that I can't, you know, really immerse myself in, a book reading or, anything like that. But, I recognize like some people definitely are. And I think he put a lot of thought, or at least his publisher did, or somebody did, into, how can they really, really help people that are struggling when they really have this, deep, deep addiction to social media and their phone and things like that. And so, I cannot recommend this highly enough. If you are constantly one of these people that it's like, I feel like I no longer have control over my brain. I don't have control over my ability to think, to focus, to sustain attention. And if you know for a fact you are reaching for that phone and you are looking for it, to give you, to calm you, to reduce anxiety, to do any of those things, if you are somebody who cannot stand in a line at the grocery store without pulling out your phone to looking at it because you can't experience even just the slightest bit of boredom, I can't recommend Dose Effects for just giving you a little bit of insight into the behavior, into your brain, into why this is happening for you. And if even like the way this book is laid out is not kind of engaging enough for you, seek out the audiobook version, seek out something, because I do think that like information is power. And, we need to, as a society, as individuals, begin to wrangle back our lives. I think from these platforms, they're robbing us of our lives. It is what it is. They're robbing us of our lives. I've been thinking a lot. I opened this video, I was talking about, I'm 50. Most of my life was spent prior to having these platforms. And I think about the things I used to do, like the hiking without a cell phone, right? Like we didn't even have cell phones when I would hike, and I would head up into the mountains in Colorado and just, you don't even think about it. I don't think even I would do that now, even though I definitely did that in my late teens and early 20s. I mean, I think about like activities I used to engage in, like doing puzzles, crocheting, making quilts, reading. I still read books, but I used to read way more books than I do now. And I think it's because, those things require more of you, to sort of engage with them. And we just have this easy, quick fix now that is taking away our interaction with some of the more, rewarding things in life, and I think it makes me feel sad. It makes me feel sad to think about how much I've already given away, the experiences that, I haven't had because this is sort of, insidiously creeped into our lives over time. But I think about kids nowadays, you know what I mean? And not to be that person, I guess I am being that person, but it's like I think about, you know, how much time are they spending on these devices? What experiences are they not having in general, because this is easier, like that consumption's easier, it's way more addictive. And that, are they still having the opportunity to form, like, my generation had these baseline memories of just experiences with the actual world, with the actual physical world, and obviously it's not that they're never doing it, but it's certainly supplemented a lot with these devices. This is why I gave up TikTok, which as a writer might be considered sort of you're losing a marketing opportunity, right? But I think while that is absolutely true, there's a bigger part of me that I don't want to be a part of that. Um, that short form video content that just leads to one addictive hit after another. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'll sell a lot less books, maybe, probably. But yeah, I think it's just kind of deciding like, I don't want that in my life, and nor do I want to be a part of that in somebody else's life either. I guess I would rather you learn to crochet, pick up a book, kind of thing. go outside, go for a hike, go for a run, play with your kids, something, anything. It's funny because he talks in here, it's better to watch television. So I grew up and like when my kids were young, like the big thing was like, oh my God, not too much television. Don't have them, watching videos, but interestingly enough, it is better to watch television or watch a movie. He talks in here about how we've even as a society lost the ability to sustain attention to a movie. Just think about like when was the last time you watched it, whether it's in your home or theater or whatever, you're watching a movie and you couldn't tolerate sustaining attention long enough to even get through that whole long form content movie without picking up your phone to sort of break it up. Like you're feeling boredom from watching a movie or a television show. And that I think struck me, because that was the big warning to me as a parent. Like when your kids were little, it's like, oh my gosh, don't just put them in front of the television. Don't just put them in front of the movie screen watching Disney videos all day kind of thing, which I totally let my kids watch television and movies and things like that. And who knew something even worse was coming along, to sort of basically kind of like fracture the ability to sustain attention long-term, experience boredom of any kind, and that anytime you had even the slightest feeling of anxiety or boredom or overwhelm or whatever, you had this like self-medicating, device that you're looking at right away. So I do think knowledge is power, and that's why, I continue to look to experts, other people who have done the research and taken the time to kind of lay it out. I cannot recommend this book enough. If this is something that you're struggling with, if you think that you really do want to like make some changes with regards to the control over your life that, some of these platforms have. Now I've given up TikTok, but like I'm still on Instagram, as I feel like if you're going to like make changes, I do think particularly like removing things that are of an addictive nature. Like some people can just kind of cold turkey stuff and be done with it, I got rid of TikTok, and then right now I don't scroll the videos on Instagram kind of thing. And I might be like, I've reduced my use of Instagram. Like I haven't really been posting very much there. I haven't been consuming very much there. And I'm hyper aware. I've become hyper aware of when I pick up my phone and I open that app kind of thing. So that's where I am with those things right now. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think people love them. They depend on them, quite frankly, far too much. But maybe if this video has found you, maybe there's a couple resources in here that could be helpful with regards to helping get you off of that cycle. And, just to choose to spend our lives on other things and other places and, something that's more rewarding, more fulfilling. It has certainly helped me with regards to just my writing and my ability to kind of, focus, to sit. Because, a lot of times with writing, it's like you have to sit with it and you have to be willing to sit with it long enough in order to, for the words to come, for the scenes to sort of show up for you or whatever. And, if you never allow yourself to get into that flow state by kind of being able to sit still through the psychological, sometimes painful boredom of waiting for the words to come, then you never get to, that feel good, that feeling good through sustaining effort over something that was long and difficult. And ultimately, I think much more rewarding. Like the reward you get from a really good writing session or reading, 5 to 6 really great chapters or, getting to completing the loop of that hike that you were on. I mean, to me, it's so much greater. It's so much better. It's so much, more than that fast hit you get from spending 30 minutes on short form video content kind of thing. So anyway, that's where I am. You might hate this video. You may not want to know this. You might be very, very addicted to some of those platforms. And, I just, it's just where I am. It's just the sort of the awareness that I have come to. And I hope that you found something valuable in this video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are not a subscriber here, I hope that you will decide to subscribe. If you're new, my name is Rebecca Taylor. I'm the best-selling author of domestic suspense novels. My most recent book came out in December of 24. It's The Last Nanny. Definitely, I've been told it's a page turner and people can't put it down. So if you need to practice sustaining attention to something other than social media, give a book a try, and I cannot recommend The Dose Effect by TJ Powers enough. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.